to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Hello and welcome to the third part in our series on effective communication on the telephone. And this week we have the last 3 tips in the series. So number 8 is don't be tempted to do other things. And I've included this because this is something that I've done in the past, mainly on teleconferences rather than one-to-one telephone calls. Sometimes I thought, oh, this isn't relevant to me, I will just answer this email while they're having this conversation because it's nothing to do with me. And then I've started doing other things, typing, reading, answering emails. But this isn't ideal, particularly if you're on a one-to-one call, because the person can probably hear you. Firstly, because they haven't got your full attention, so you may not answer as quickly, or you may not even give the correct answers if you're not concentrating. But also if you're doing other things, or you're walking around or shuffling papers, they can hear that you're doing that, and it gives the impression that you're not really listening. Whether or not you are, perhaps you are really good at multitasking, but if someone else can hear you doing other things, then it's quite distracting for them, and they may feel that it's a bit disrespectful as well. So I don't really mean things like making notes, because I often make notes if I'm talking to someone, and so you can hear me typing, doing that. But I mean doing completely unrelated tasks. Perhaps you are busy, perhaps you don't have much time, but the other person will probably hear what you're doing even if they can't see you. And another thing related to that is if you're interrupted. So firstly, is the interruption something that's so urgent that it can't wait until you finished your call? If it isn't, then discourage your colleagues from interrupting you while you're on a call, or tell them that you'll deal with it afterwards. But the point here is don't leave the other person waiting. If you really do have to go and deal with the other thing, then let the other person know that you'll call them back, rather than leaving them hanging around listening to holding music, or just listening to what's happening in your office, or being on hold, because that's wasting their time while you're doing something else. So if you really can't make the other person wait, then tell the person with whom you're speaking on the phone that you'll call them back and apologize, because then they can get on with their work, you can get on with yours, and then you can come back and finish what you were doing afterwards. There's nothing more annoying than holding music. So number 9 is to summarize the conversation so that everybody has the same information and everybody knows what's going to happen next. Obviously, this won't apply to all conversations. Sometimes you just need to find something out, or check something, or tell somebody something, and then you won't need to do it. But if there's been some discussion and you've been working out together how something will move forward, then it's always good to summarize the conversation, what you're going to do, what the other person's going to do, by when, if anybody else needs to be involved, if you need to get any more information. It's just a quick summary so that everybody knows what they need to do, and if anything needs to be added to that list of things to do, that you can do it then rather than remembering later. And it's just helpful. Some people prefer to do this in writing as well. I do that sometimes too, just after a telephone call, write a quick summary and email it to them. That's fine too, and sometimes that's more useful if there's a lot of information to remember. But whether you do it in writing or on the telephone, then sometimes it's good to have a quick summary, particularly if it's been more of a meeting type telephone call rather than just a quick chat. And the final thing, point 10, is about voicemails. So be clear and keep it short. Some people don't like leaving voicemails at all, and that's a bit annoying if somebody just rings you and you can see that they've rung you and you don't know why. And sometimes a voicemail isn't always the appropriate choice. If you have a lot of information to give someone, it's kinder to them if you send them an email often, because then they don't need to write a lot of things down. They already have it in front of them in the form of an email. But if you are going to leave a voicemail, there are some things that you can do to make it easier for the other person. So make sure that your message is clear. Why are you calling them? Do you want to tell them something? Do you want them to do something? Do you want them to call you back? Make sure that the message is clear and what you want the other person to do is clear. Keep to the point and avoid long rambling messages. So you may not know that you're going to be leaving a voicemail. You just call and find that the other person isn't there. But you should think about what you want to say and say that, rather than leaving a 2 or 3 minute voicemail, because other people haven't really got time to listen to that. And the whole point of the message is to leave a message, not to have a long chat with yourself. So make it easy for the other person and leave them a message that shows what you want them to do and why you've called, in as few words as possible. The third thing is make sure the other person knows how they can contact you and what you want them to do. So do you want them to email you? Do you want them to call you? And if you want them to call you, what number do you want them to use if they don't have your details already? So those are just a few things there to make it easier when you leave voicemails. And think about the voicemails that you're left as well. Are there some things that really drive you crazy? Because if there are, they'll probably drive other people crazy if you do them too. So just make it as to the point and as clear as possible to help the other person. So those are the 10 tips. And if you'd like a PDF with these 10 tips, I have one. And if you go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast/episode 7, there are the show notes for this episode, and there's also a contact form at the bottom. And if you want the PDF with all 10 tips on, you can send me your details and I'll send you that PDF. Also, if you want to tell me anything about your telephone experiences, good or bad, or if you've tried any of these 10 tips over the last 3 weeks and how it went, then it would be great to hear from you. You can either do that on the contact form, or you can email me at kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com. So I hope the 10 tips will be useful. We'll be doing something else next week, so we've finished this series now, and I will speak to you again next week. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.